Yeah. I will tell you, I am absolutely ecstatic that you are all here. Give yourselves a round of applause. This has been a journey getting to this point, and this talk specifically, where this is it. And so I rarely get nervous. We've been doing these talks for the past few days. Yeah, you could check the drip, you know. Big shout out to my man Gordon Holiday. You could give him a round of applause. He designed this jacket. This is a Roulet staff jacket, Romeo Burden and Picasso. You know, we're about creatives, but I want to do that because I think it's very important to understand that we're here to celebrate excellence. And this project has inspired far more than I think you could possibly imagine across the board, right? We have exhibitions in North Carolina at the Mint Museum. We have video games that have been created. We have all types of things that have come out of this zeitgeist, out of this thing that was created. And we get to talk to the person that made it happen, made the impossible possible. So without further ado, can we stand up? Can we do this right? Can we stand up? Because I think it's important. You don't have to. Your leg might hurt, but I need you to. I need this to happen properly. When I say and I introduce this, we have to go crazy. I want this place to radiate. I want like the neighbors to be like, you know, down the block. We know our neighbor down the block, right? We want them to be like, yo, what the fuck are they doing in there? Please give it up for LeSean Thomas. You can keep it going, keep it going, keep it going. Let's get louder. Let's get louder. Man. So this conversation, we gonna keep it real. Can we keep it real for a little bit? Epic shit.
Appreciate y'all.
How in the world did this happen?
It starts with 2017. I was at Netflix offices in LA, and I had a meeting with John Derderian, who was then the series director of anime at Netflix when they formed in 2014. And I was already in Japan working on a short called Children of Ether with Crunchyroll. And John and I have been talking quite a lot about how we can get us to collaborate, because he didn't have any access to Americans, in particular Black Americans, who understood how to be a showrunner for animated TV series with Japanese studios in Japan. And so I pitched this idea for Yasuke to him, I think in 2017, I believe it was 2017, and then 2 months later in Japan. I pitched it in 2017 in Japan. And then 3 weeks later, was it 3 months later? It was a long time ago. 3 months later, we reconnected again in Netflix LA offices. And when I showed up to the office, he had already seen the project that I pitched to him. And so when I showed up in the lobby, and this is the Netflix, because they have so many buildings in LA now. And this is the big Netflix building that's like right up by the 101 that you see on the right when you're going downtown LA. And I get into the lobby, and Darius is there, Lakeith, you know, from Atlanta. But this is Lakeith Stanfield before he did Sorry to Bother You.
Darius is in the building. You're like, yo, what up, Darius? With the sword on your neck.
Be real talk. He showed up with a katana and everything.
Crazy.
Like his character, you know, he was really, really excited about this project. And so this is before he had done Sorry to Bother You. And so he wasn't Lakeith Stanfield as we know him. He was Darius in Atlanta. And so that's how I saw him. You know, I was like, oh, it's the Atlanta dude. And so we went upstairs, and me, Lakeith, his manager, and a couple of other Netflix executives with John Derderian sitting down and figure out what's the point of this story? How do we want to tell this story? What do we want to focus on? Forget this genre. What do we want to focus on? And Lakeith was a really big advocate on focus on trauma and PTSD. So he wanted to have a character that was focused on just recovering from his past. And I thought that was fascinating because at that time, we hadn't really done any 2D animated TV dramas before. I think the last time I saw an American 2D animated TV drama, 2D animated TV drama with a black lead was HBO's Spawn. And so prior to that, we hadn't really done it. Most of our stories are obviously truncated into what I like to call the kiddie ghetto, you know? And that might sound like a reductive term to people who work in kids and family, but for somebody who's been working in it for a long time, knowing the history of the United States and their relationship with children, their relationship with animation and advertising, 6 to 11 programming is likely the only way you're gonna get a show greenlit. And if you're gonna do adult animation, it's usually one drama, which is comedy. And I didn't wanna do an animated series that touched on any of those spaces. Japanese anime was the only medium at the time that played in those areas, pardon me. And so when we sat down, we were thinking, okay, this is gonna be a TVMA show. This is not gonna be a 6 to 11 show. We want to focus on something that we haven't really done before. And so fast forward, I think maybe 5 or 6 months later, they came to me and said, can you make it shorter? Because originally I pitched it as a 6-episode miniseries. I don't like doing long form stories, just full disclosure. I'm a fan of the OVA. That's how I got into anime. That's how Ninja Scroll. You know what I'm saying? So original video animations that are short, were the things that I wanted to get into. Also, I don't like working on long projects for a long period of time. And so I got approached by Taiki Sakurai, who at the time was the head of anime in Japan for Netflix. And he asked me to make it shorter. And so he's like, can you make it 4 episodes? And that's when Netflix started playing with short form stories, because at that time they were doing full on series. And so I was like, all right, cool, whatever we need to do to get it done. And then fast forward into production on my other project, John Dadarian hits me up in 2020. We were negotiating other projects, and in 2018, John Dadarian emailed me, and I talk about it in the introduction of the Yasuke art book. I hope y'all copped that.
Listen, y'all saw that book. Crazy.
I always wanted my anime production art book. You know what I'm saying? That's how I got into the game. And so I talk a lot about that in the introduction of the book that those who purchased, thank you so much. And we talk about just how rare it is for executives in this business to show that they want passion from you. And that was one of the things that made me raise my eyebrow when John approached me. He said, hey, LeSean, we really love Yasuke to be your next project, but we don't want to do it unless you're passionate about it. And I was like, that's crazy. No executive says that to me. Because understandably so, this is a business. And so, in the business aspect, on the administrative side, it's about the bottom line. Can you generate a project on budget, on time, and let us return a profit at the same time? And so I was more peaked to the passionate part, because I believe that John at that time understood that creative autonomy and passion and bottom line can be interconnected if done well, And so we started production on that show. And right when we got our deal closed pretty quickly, right before we got our deal closed, John said, okay, great. How do you feel about Flying Lotus? Because Lakeith was already on board. How do you feel about Flying Lotus? I was just talking to him, a couple weeks ago, and he's a really big fan of anime. He worked on the Shinichiro Watanabe Blade Runner Blackout short, and he wants to, get involved in anime. And I was just like, what? I'm listening to Till the Quiet Comes. That's still my favorite Flying Lotus album. And so I'm like, hell yeah, like, of course. Why not? And he was like, oh, also he wants to be involved in the story. And I don't know why he might have thought I felt some kind of way about that, because, creators tend to have a stereotype of being protective of their stuff. But I was like, hell yeah, because I want to argue with this dude. If we arguing about Yasuke, that means this is a real joint project. We collaborate, and I'm not getting Flying Lotus as a fan. I'm getting him as an open collaborator. So I lean all the way into that. And so once the deal was set, John had us meet up. Me and Flylo talked for like an hour, and then once everything was cool, we all agreed, and then the paperwork got done, and then we moved forward. And then it took about maybe 4 or 5 months to get things moving, because we didn't have a studio to partner with the project yet. And it was Taiki Sakurai. I don't know if anyone's familiar with Taiki Sakurai, but I mentioned earlier, was head of Netflix Japan Anime, at least original series for anime. He also happened to be the writer of the anime that we're going to screen this weekend called Redline for Takeshi Koike. And he was also a series writer on Standalone Complex, Ghost in the Shell. And so he's very, very closely connected with Takeshi Koike. And Takeshi Koike, he's my all-time favorite animator. And he's a very unique animator because he has an American style compared to other Japanese animators. And his work is notoriously famous for being incredibly difficult to animate on. That's why he's always the animation director of all of his shows that he's the character designer of. It's very rare that you have a Takeshi Koike animated show and he's not the Sakuga Kantoku, you know what I'm saying? And so I was quite excited about that, but I was hoping that he would also be the animation director, just as a fan. But in order, before we get to Takeshi Koike, we had to get to Studio Mappa, which is run by CEO Manabu Otsuka-san. And so Taiki and Manabu were talking for about 3 or 4 months before Taiki had convinced Manabu to meet me and Flylo in Tokyo to have a conversation about the show. And it was in that meeting that he gave us the blessing to do the project. And then once Mappa got on board, it was time to build the team. But that's essentially how it got started. It was in a very short period of time. And these kind of projects, I'm giving y'all a Cliff's Notes version of it to make it seem like, oh yeah, we just sat down and had a sandwich.
It was quick and shit.
Yeah. Here's $14 million. No problem. Let's have a drink. All right, let's go. It doesn't work that way with the Japanese. Anyone's familiar with doing business with the Japanese, they are very meticulous. They have a very high context culture. They're not like us here. They want to make sure everything is, the T's are crossed, the I's are dotted. With us, we do a handshake, and then hopefully it works out down the line. You know what I'm saying? And that's just the American way. I call it frontier logic. You know what I'm saying? And so they don't work that way. And so for me, once that was set up, we were off to the races in terms of getting the project moving forward, and we decided we were going to do this a little bit differently because this was a foreign project, or a Gaijin project. And so we decided we were going to spend an entire year on just pre-production. That's character designs, props, world setting, background design, color design, storyboards. And then once all of that's done, then we start a full 2.5 years of just straight up animation production, main production, post-production. And that's a very unusual way to work. But because this was a truncated story, we were able to set up how we wanted to do it. And we wanted to introduce another opportunity for MAPPA to do something different. Manabu Otsuka-san is a really open-minded dude, and he's a very young CEO for Japanese anime studios, in my opinion. And so he was always open to trying to see where he could exploit his talent to the globe on a big project. And also do different types of production challenges too. Like, what he was excited about with this project is that it reminded him of Vampire Hunter D Bloodlust. Because that production was done in English first. And then they dubbed it, later. And so we did Yasuke the exact same way. We had it in English first, and then we had to translate scripts. And it was a little bit of a challenge. Originally, John Dodarian, because of the success of Castlevania at the time, John Dodarian was like, yo, let's have everybody's mouths perform just like, English phonetics, A, E, I, O, U. And at that time, he wasn't familiar with the Japanese animation mouth chart style. They do 3 to 5 mouth charts, open, close, and then extreme. They don't do a lot of A, E, I, O, U. They've done it a few times with a few animes. I think Katsuhiro Otomo's Akira is probably the most consistent anime where when you watch them talk, they're really pronouncing the Japanese words. And he wanted to do that with the English version because the scripts were first. But he didn't understand that only the South Koreans are great at that because we've trained them over 40 years to animate our shows, and we send them our American mouth charts. And so that was a bit of a challenge. And so when you watch Yasuke, sometimes they're pronouncing stuff and other times they're not. Because some parts of the production, once we were off to the races, some people got it and some people didn't. But I quite liked that because it felt like it was more of an artistic expression of an approach. And so that was it. Once that was set up and we had our team, we were trying to figure out how to get going. And so things started moving. At the end of 2018, we finished our scripts. We started in, I think, April. We finished around November, December, and then we announced the show in 2018 in December. And then I think at the top of 2019, we started on main production. Koike got started. And then we wrapped up everything by the end of 2019, and then we started main production in 2020, and then 3 months later, the pandemic happened. And then everything kind of stopped. At least the world kind of stopped. But that's essentially it.
Yeah, navigating this, right? Like, give that a round of applause first. You just got a master class in producing a multi-million-dollar production in about 3 minutes. That's epic. But once again, talking about the impossible, right? Because this is impossible. Black man goes to Japan, and creates anime. Um, it sounds like a movie in itself, right? We might have to create that shit. Spike Lee, direct the shit. But the story in itself, man, why Mecca? Right? Because people are like, yo, this is a period piece. This is supposed to be. I love the Mecca. The Mecca is actually one of my favorite characters, right?
Oh, you like Haruto?
Oh man, because he's sweet, but he's dangerous.
I love that. So it's a really good question. I'm glad you asked that question because I've seen throughout the years. I'm not on social media, and so I like my blood pressure low. You know what I'm saying? I found more valuable sources of validation. You know what I'm saying? Than going online to peacock, and my personality is not built on that. And so for me, I have the stuff that I have seen online. I just thought it was fascinating, the reaction to it. But the most popular question was that when I would see stuff online from a vocal minority or people who had issues with it, or not issues, but just certain expectations. I wouldn't say issues because this is all art, and no art is apolitical. And everybody interprets art based on their own life experiences of how they consume media, and they have their own personal choices of what they want to get into. And so they become experts of media, but they're only experts of the shit that they like. You know what I'm saying? And so I understood that, and it took a lot for me to project that onto my show. And in part to that, the reason why I put Mecca in it, because why not? And I think for me, it was, I saw Yasuke as an audacity project. I already did this with Boondocks with Aaron and Carl. We already did it with Black Dynamite. And so we were doing anime adjacent content, looking at these folks who were inspired by. Now that I'm in Japan as a creative leader, working with Japanese people, teaching them how to draw lips the right way on black people, I wanted to move.
Yeah, you can snap for that. Hold up. We here for everything tonight, by the way, just so you know. The kids done left. They were here this morning. I mean, we got some kids in here. I'm sorry, y'all, But we are here for all of it, all right?
But, joking aside, it took me some years to get some distance from it because, as someone who's creating content, when you put content out there and it reverberates in the media like that the way it did, because it happened during the pandemic, cats were stuck in their cribs when they was watching this. And so, you can't help but react to the energy, all of the energy, and, I always like to quote Steven Spielberg. He had this famous quote because he's famously not into reviews. He doesn't like to review any of the stuff he do. And he says, and they ask him, why don't you like to look at stuff online? Why don't you like to look at the reviews? He was like, because if you have to believe some of it, then you have to believe all of it. And I don't have the blood pressure to maintain that. And so I like to have that mentality. Also, we're creating this stuff in a vacuum. My relationship with the show will never be the relationship with the viewers' relationship with the show. And so, and I'll get back to that in a second. But I chose Mecca because, and I say why not, because for me, the Audacity Project meant, okay, people have never seen anything like this before, and they're already telling me how to change it. And as a creative, I understand the relationship between the stuff I make and the consumer's relationship with media. And we have to be specific because when this specific consumer is a very specific African American, or Black, I like to say Black American citizen. Relationship with the media. We have a very particular history. We don't need to get into the weeds with that. It's only been, and I say this to you all week, it's only been, 55, 56 years since we got equality? And we've been peacocking within the time frame of a middle-aged white woman. And she's still alive, B.
She's still here.
You understand what I'm saying? And so for me, I played a considerable part as a creative leader in these shows like Boondocks and Black Dynamite, mining the dark side of our culture for comedy. That's a very good way for us to overcome our trauma. It's a very common way to engage with everybody, different cultures in the United States. And although that's great and it's nice and it's sexy when your show's doing a lot of numbers, as a creative, you still have to go negative to spaces to find that. And so for me, having spent 8 years of my life dwelling as a creative in socioeconomical narratives and satirical, irreverent comedies centering around Black American culture, I got exhausted with it in a way. And I'm not entirely sure a lot of people can understand that. Some people do, but doing it at a high level when you have to deliver and attract subscribers, it's at a whole nother level. And so for me, even Flylo, he was like, yo, man, this nigga is not gonna be a slave in this story. We might hint at it, but he's gonna be fucking awesome. Let's do something cool. Same way.
Yeah, you could clap up for that, for sure.
And so, thank you. And so for me, I also understand the consumer's perspective. We don't got shit, B. We don't got nothing. What we got? We got conservative, and God bless them, we need them. We have conservative Black Americans who are God-fearing, who are making animated shows, and they're always family nuclear dynamics, and they're always comedies, and they're always kids shows. When are we leaving Earth, B? When are we going to use magic and ride monsters and do all of this stuff? And Yasuke was perfect because he was someone that wasn't popular in the mainstream. Now, don't get it twisted. People know who Yasuke was before my show dropped, but he wasn't mainstream. You understand what I'm saying? And so when we released this show, we knew that with MAPPA, the top anime studio at the time, still one of the top studios in my opinion, Lakeith Stanfield, hot off of an Oscar nomination on Judas and the Black Messiah. Flying Lotus getting the Grammy nomination for executive producing and being nominated Producer of the Year for Thundercats, It Is What It Is. This is all leading up to April 21st when this show premiered. We needed a casual audience to think about how to bring more eyes to anime from our perspective. Because I could have made Vinland Saga with Yasuke. I could have made Samurai Champloo with Yasuke. That's what a lot of cats was saying online. Why you ain't make Vinland Saga? Why? And I'm like, yeah, see, you're a consumer. You want the same shit.
Same shit.
Which is cool, because there's nothing wrong with that. But I'm not a consumer like you. I'm a creative leader in this space. And I understand that if I'm going to create a fantasy show where there's a 40-year-old man past his prime fighting in Jirageki, Edo period Japan, and fighting robots, for some people don't make any sense to them, I know that when all of that stuff is gone, the conversation is, yo, did you know he was based on a real person? Now NPR is talking about it. Now Time Magazine's talking about it. And that's what it's about. The reason why I made Yasuke, the reason why I put Mecha is for a multi-pronged reason based on our lack of access from history, our exposure to ourselves, and what we could possibly do. Put a brown character in a non-comedy genre that we don't explore, and just let him be cool, just like white folks doing their cartoons, just like Japanese people doing their cartoons.
Yeah.
But I don't want to knock on the hardcore anime fans, because we're not here without them. And so I can't control the narrative of why we don't have access to this. And the energy and because these fans are passionate. I don't hate on them. That's passion. That's all that is. It's just passion. And sometimes when you buy yourself online, you know what I'm saying, it gets a little darker than that. And it's autonomous, and you don't have to worry about getting any backlash. But for me, generally, I'm looking at Yasuke as an opportunity to be an idea about something. And too many people as consumers are used to it being the next hot anime. It should have been like this. And I understand that, but no one else is doing that in that way. And so for me, when I hear dudes say, yo, you should have made it like Vinland Saga, I'm like, go do that, B. I already here now. Now you screwed. You fucked now because
I am now.
Yeah.
Will you be later?
Yeah, exactly my point. And so for me, I have to choose which side to sit on, and when it comes to that perspective, that's the side I'm on. Because, when you're doing new things, you're going to be dolo anyway. That's the way it works. Whenever you're doing something new, people are going to be like, that's not what I like. And because the work is being framed, I would say, as being interpreted and being valued, because now people are spending their hard-earned cash to pay for the subscription to see this thing, they place a value on it. And so if it doesn't meet expectations, it's whack. And I understand that too, but somebody got to do it. And so for me, I'm really happy that more people love Yasuke than people didn't love Yasuke. But I also love that people didn't like Yasuke, because I learned something about what black people like and don't like, because we don't make stuff like this. And so for me, it was about seeing what people felt, what they didn't like, and how they reacted to the content. It's fascinating to me because Yasuke is an immigrant Pan-African. He's not Black history. He's not even African history. He's an African. We can subscribe to him and we can do research, but nobody would have cared about that. Nobody would have cared about him if
he's currently Japanese history.
Yeah, he's Japanese history, because no one would have cared about him if Nobunaga didn't do this, right? And I'm in Japan. I'm not looking at my Japanese historians. I had 3 historians working with me so that we knew what was right, so that we can just say fuck all that.
Word.
And they were on the level, because believe it or not, there's very rare Jirageki fantasies being made in Japan. All of their fantasy stuff is reverse engineered European fantasy. You see it. Right? And so they were happy that we was doing something. We coming through. We doing something that they like. And many of them, including Takeshi Koike, didn't even know Yasuke was real. Don't be surprised. Who knows all the presidents in the United States right now? You see what I'm saying?
Let alone a Pan-African samurai.
And so this is the concept. I'm learning all of these things as I'm trying to move a $15 million production and prove to these folks at Netflix that I can deliver. And I can. But for me, when you're in that space, when you're in the circle, when you're in the eye of the storm, you know, you're not thinking about what people think. I'm not looking at Takeshi Koike or Yutaka Minoa and saying, yo, is what we making anime? It's insulting. Because anime is just it's a marketing descriptor developed by licensing companies who wanted to.
Yeah, go ahead.
Anime is a marketing descriptor described by licensors in the 80s to get Americans to see this exotic stuff. And they needed to name to market it. They needed to other it. So they called it Japanese word. But you can't argue that now. It's a multi-billion-dollar industry. So everybody calls anime whatever they think it is. Some say it's a style. Some say it's, you know, a racial nomenclature of how many black people you have on the show. But what we do know is that anime is like urban music. It's a euphemism to cover a swath of a racial group of people who originated a flow or a style or quality. And I understand that too. And so for me, this is a long answer, right? And I'm thinking as I'm talking about it, because no one has asked me this question. I wasn't expecting you to ask it to me in front of everybody. I mean, we talked about it. You know what I'm saying? And so for me, a lot of thought went to the show, and a lot of the responses to the show is quite simple. They don't know how much thought went into the project. And so for me, the reason why I put Mecha in it is because I wanted to show that we can do whatever we want. And you don't have to like it, because the value of a show is dependent on what your expectations are. I'm fine with that, but I'm gonna do what I want. And that's why it was in there. And so you have a lot of spaces that feel like they're authorities on a culture that they don't live in. They can't speak the language. They're not over there. I'm over there. I'm not telling them what it is. And so for me, once I understood those things and I knew that I worked really hard, that was what I relied on. And so the reason why Mecha is in there is because I want to normalize black ideas outside of the comedy genre, outside of the 6 to 11 genre. We need to do dramas. We need to do sci-fi fantasy. We need to do psychological thrillers. All the stuff that we praise the Japanese for, we can do. We just do it with best-selling novels for live action. We don't do it in animation. And so for me, I didn't know where this was going to go, but when it came out, it was crazy. It was kind of like when the Boondocks first came out, season 1. You know what I'm saying? Everyone was like, this is amazing. This needs to be canceled. You know what I'm saying?
Shut it off.
And that's what happens when you're at the tip of the spear, when you're Leonardo DiCaprio on the Titanic. You know what I'm saying? You can't look behind you, you just see in front of you. And that's just the game. And anybody in this room who's pursuing those things, they're going to be in the same spot. Don't look at me. Y'all going to be in the same spot when y'all try to do something new. And the other thing I learned was that a lot of black people don't have a deep experience with the spectrum of the black experience when they're seeing it in the media. They looked at Yasuke and they were like, yeah, but it's not black though. Well, he's not black American. I'm not talking about African American culture. I'm talking about a Pan-African. You can't relate to him, but we're so happy to see a brown dude, we grab onto it. You understand what I'm saying? And so for me, I understood those things. And if anyone knows anything about Japanese history, when you watch Yasuke, there's tons and tons and tons of Japanese references to Japanese history. But people get so wrapped up into the fact that we don't get to have these opportunities. You should have done it this way. You should have done it that way. Or I wouldn't have done it that way. And what's so great about anime is that black Americans, especially in this country, are so familiar with consuming it, they all maybe want to do their own one day. And so everybody has their own idea what the first black anime should look like. And so no matter what you do, someone's going to feel a ways about it because it's a scarcity mindset. We need to have more so that we have more variety. And I understood that, and so that's why I continue to move in that direction.
Yeah, we can clap it up for that. You know, I think one of the things I found interesting and I think is powerful, and I think a reason why this place is, you know, filled to capacity. We got people standing in the back. I love this shit. You know what I'm saying? You know, you look at movies like The Last Samurai featuring Tom Cruise. You know what I'm saying?
I mean,
right.
Go ahead.
But then we get Yasuke. We're in the middle of the pandemic. You know what I'm saying? You got Gordon in his basement making fly shit. You know what I'm saying? Like, inspired by your joint, which I didn't know until you showed me the article, right? But this real historical figure that you're working with Japanese luminaries on, that's something that I think really shows where you are as a creative, right? Because, you know, listen, we're going to do this real quick, right? You know, y'all make noise when I mention, you know, the shit that he done worked on, right? So we got Boondocks, you know what I'm saying? Black Dynamite, Legend of Korra, Ben 10, you know what I'm saying? Like, need I go, right? We got, like, the list is crazy. But you are someone who is a creative leader. You're someone who's managing teams, managing multi-million-dollar budgets, making this thing, you're executing your project, you know, like making these projects come to life. And you could have chosen anything. You could have chosen any person, right? They already know your resume. They already know what you're able to do. You know, within the context of working with these Japanese luminaries and then this character, how the hell did you get them to make the vision as robust as it is?
You know, Japan is much like the United States when it comes to cinema. If you got a Tom Cruise on your project, everybody's going to want to be on the project, you know, and in Japan, it's the same way. Once Koike came on board, everybody was coming out of the woodworks. And I learned that Takeshi Koike, even within Japan, is just like a rock star. You know, it was like, oh my God, Takeshi Koike is doing a Jirageki fantasy with the Black Samurai. I got to get on that. I got to get my piece. It's just like rappers when they hear an MC's doing a feature, they want to be on it. And that's something that I had learned really quickly. So credit to Takeshi Koike. When he came on board, obviously MAPPA played a role, but MAPPA is already famous. They have so many projects. They have so many production pipelines with so many different projects happening at the same time, completely different from each other. An artist bring on board can really add prestige to your project in Japan. You know, and so when Takeshi Koike came on board, Masahiro Ando showed up. You know, he's the director of Sword of the Stranger. You know what I'm saying? Soejima-san, who's the director at David Productions. They do Spriggan, but they mostly do JoJo's Bizarre Adventure. He's the director of that series. He came on, he was my Enchusu on episode 2, my technical director. The director of Drifters is my episode director on episode 4. Naoyuki Anda, who's done a lot of work, you know, Gundam Hathaway, the Berserk movies. All of these dudes start coming on board when they saw the project. And then when they learned that it was my project, then they got even more excited. Because they were just like, how does Gaijin, because they were so fascinated by it because they were more intrigued with the fact that Yasuke was actually, you know, someone that they were familiar with. Now, it's funny me saying that because if anyone knows any history of Japan and film and NHK, they've done dramas based on Yasuke. But me being an American that I am, I assume all Japanese people watch the same stuff. So I'm like, yo, wow, you don't know about Yasuke did the NHK? He's like, I don't watch that. Just like everybody else, you know what I'm saying? And so you learn that some people know who he is and some people don't. And I think that was a big part of it. Takeshi Koike, it was really that simple. You know, it was Takeshi Koike came on board and everybody wanted to animate his stuff. And Satoshi Iwataki was chosen. Rest in peace, Satoshi Iwataki died early this year. He was my animation director on Yasuke. All the stuff y'all saw was him. And we got a little tribute for him in the book. But he passed away early this year. And he was the guy chosen to animate Takeshi Koike's work, which was, you know, no easy task. Because Takeshi Koike's designs are so non-anime and mainstream look. They almost look like American comic books. Some people looked at some of the designs, they're like, why Nobunaga look white? You know what I'm saying? But he's so influenced. Takeshi Koike is influenced by American comic books and Peter Chung. And a lot of people don't know that. And so me working with him closely, we wanted to make sure that he was a character that looked really, really cool, and that he was old. The other thing you notice, a lot of anime star young people. And so having him be in his 40s. I mean, he's young in his flashbacks, but the general adventure is him in his 40s, past his prime, you know, as a Ronin. That was really unusual as well. And so the attraction of Koike, you know, and Mappa and the interest in Yasuke and a foreigner making it drove a lot of attention to the project. And it's rare because you guys must know there's so many
It's impossible.
shows.
You are the one.
I mean, that's what
I'm saying I don't know that many. It's like saying like, oh shit, there's like 5 Jay-Z. You know what I'm saying? Like there's one LeSean Thomas.
I mean, you know, I think for me, anybody who's followed my career, they know I work outside the system. You know what I'm saying? I moved to Korea because I wanted to learn outsourcing. You know, and then by the time I got in a position to make the stuff I wanted to make, Netflix, this anti-legacy studio entity, you know, came in when Hollywood was dragging their feet, right? And so it's really it's a combination of things. Netflix technically being, I like to coin them as the Uber of IP creation. You know, Disney, Warner Brothers, Paramount, Universal, those are old taxi cab companies, right? And Netflix is like, we can't compete with the taxi cab companies. They got their own cars. You know what I'm saying? They got their own houses. They only got their own garages. We don't got the inventory for that. Let's bring the stuff to where the taxi cab companies don't want to go, and that's global. Hollywood likes everybody coming to them. They don't really go to Korea and give them $2 billion to make Korean dramas. We would have never got Squid Game from Hollywood if Netflix didn't dump money over there. And so Netflix has no choice because they have to compete in the place that Hollywood doesn't occupy, and that's the globe. And so in that, there are more opportunities for voices. And so people may look at me as the one or whatever. I don't see it that way. I see myself as an idea. And you either catch the idea and you build on it, or you ass out. You're just complaining about no more stuff. You know what I'm saying? And so for me, I understood that, and Netflix understood that, and they just saw it as an opportunity to expand. And a lot of black voices got opportunities to tell stories and write scripts and stuff because of Netflix, because of what they did for streaming, that they would have probably faced resistance from the legacy studios, because, you know, there's the gatekeepers. And so for me, the reason why I got made is in part to Netflix and democratizing IP creation and allowing more voices to come out there. And again, you just got to know how to make shows, and that comes with experience. And so I just happen to be in this unique trajectory. You know, you got to remember, I got to Mappa because I was already a producer on Black Dynamite, a supervising director. I know how to make TV shows. And that's not a popular thing that black Americans brag about to their viewing audience who may want to get into animations, because there's not a lot of us. Most of them, my peers, I love them to death. But they're also in a specific category, and rightfully so. They're trying to teach these kids. They're trying to entertain children. They're trying to raise our babies. But where's the stuff for adults? And so for me, I'm like, all right, I'll be that black American creator who's making shows that are adult, sci-fi, fantasy, while my peers cover the kids area. You know what I'm saying? You got the late, you got the great Bruce Smith. You got new voices, Matthew Cherry with Young Love. You got up and coming talent Tyree Dillay. He's doing that GOAT movie with Sony. You got don't kill me, I'm missing voices. You have Carl Jones. You know what I'm saying? And Aaron Magruder whenever he comes back with the Boondocks. But we need these we need these different voices, but we also need to add more to our library. And what I mean by that is, like, we tend to segregate our narratives into these socioeconomical boxes, right? Because we're so young as a free group of people as black Americans. We're like the Ukrainians, you know what I'm saying, minus Russia. And so for us, we're just now getting on. Okay, we got to create this culture. How do we change the world viewing us? Let's create something called hip hop. Because they stole all of our musical genres during the radio era where there was no proof. But everybody watched that struggle to make hip hop work on TV, right? And you know what I'm saying? And so that created tons of revenue streams, tons of changes of how to depict us. You don't even have to like the struggle, but you want to dance like us. We'll take that. It's better than the last 500 years, right? And so that's where we at. We're in this growing period of identity right now, and all of it matters. The old shit that's awful, that we're scared to look at, that shit matters too, because that's why we're getting this stuff. And so there just aren't enough black American leaders in TV animation to talk like this. I don't have a Denzel Washington in TV animation. I don't have a Tyler Perry in TV animation. They're all in live action, but animation is the Wild West for black people. It still is. And so platforms like Netflix allows us to have a little bit more ubiquitous opportunities to get some shows in there because, you know, it's still bottom line. And so for me, I understood that, which was why, you know, Aaron Magruder and the Boondocks changed my life. Before the Boondocks, I was trying to do my own stuff. You know, I told you I worked with George Jackson in 2001. I did my own web cartoon called Battle Seed, and then I crossed over and did some other stuff. And so for me, the Boondocks opened the door for me. And working under Aaron and seeing, and we were all babies. I was like, just turned 30, Carl was 32, I think Aaron was 33. And watching Aaron work these rooms and talk to these dudes like, nah, B, it's this, really gave me the gumption and the agency to like anime on a TV animation level, on a multi-million-dollar level. Like, yeah, we can do black culture and we can do anime. But as I got older, well, why aren't we doing these things? And so because we segregate our narratives into these socioeconomical boxes, we haven't really created simultaneous space to just leave Earth, yo. Because 55 years.
Shit, we might have to do that like tomorrow.
We still figuring it out. And that's just the business. You know what I'm saying? We have a whole lot of things to cover. And so for us, I'm Generation X. I was born in 75. I know I look young. I dress like a 12-year-old. That's why. You know what I'm saying?
You know what they say.
Black don't crack, baby.
Black don't crack.
But I'm just saying, generally speaking, you know, I understand, or I'm trying to understand, because I'm learning the industry too, you know, how do we, you know, create opportunities to incorporate ourselves in different genres that have been established by the white Hollywood system. You know, Jordan Peele's a good example. He's just doing horror movies. And his movies are like, in my opinion, great, but they're retreads of genres we've seen before. He's just putting niggas in it.
Low key.
And it's working because this is the world we live in. This is the reality of race that we have to deal with. So you got to get it where you can fit in. You know what I mean? All he did was take in my opinion, and I love Get Out. But me and my boys would joke and be like, yo, he took a 80s BC horror movie and just put a well-to-do black dude in there, but kept everybody else white.
Facts.
Now it becomes a different film because of the audience that's watching it. So everybody who watching Get Out, whether they're black, white, Asian, have a different relationship with that film. And Yasuke is the same way. And it just shows that we're still at a very young age of creative agency, creative freedom, you know? And part of that is undoing the timeline, our shackles. We act like it's 500 years from the civil rights movement because this shit isn't black and white. It's just 55. Understand what I'm saying? The forward movement, the Gen X era of saying, you're going to be the one to change. You're the one going to be the change. You're the change. Now I'm 49, and I'm like, nah, I'm not going to be the one to change. But I can be an idea. And I look at Jordan Peele as an idea. Yasuke is an idea. And I think we're still figuring out ways to separate those things. Our desire, our training, of our engagement with media literacy, our history, how we see ourselves in media, and in a lower case in terms of animation, because animation is, in my opinion, a stepchild in cinema. Getting out of that kiddie ghetto. We've been trained by Walt Disney since the 1930s. You know, Winsor McKay did Gertie the Dinosaur, changed the game for animation. And then Walt Disney and his 9 old men changed the game. They created a business for children and families because you got to get as many tickets as possible. You know what I'm saying? And then that became a market. TV was invented, cheaper budgets, you know what I mean? And so now that we're at this space, we're all trained to engage with the medium. So it's hard for adults to even look at animation and think of adult. They automatically think kids. And so Netflix is only, 10, 15 years? And I'm not tooting Netflix horn. Don't get it twisted. I'm an arms dealer. I got IPs stacked behind my back pocket. Netflix, Hulu, Crunchyroll, don't matter to me. However, Netflix opened the door. And so now you see all of these taxi cab companies trying to put their services on apps now. It's the same service, but it's on the app now, you know what I mean? And so for me, operating in that space, I had a very clear idea of what I wanted to communicate, and that is showing that we can normalize blackness in popular media in different spaces. And that is a very hard thing to do because it costs millions and millions and millions of dollars, you know?
LeSean Thomas, yeah. Give him a round of applause. You can stand up, you know. We could stand up and clap for the brother. We could stand up and clap for him. I want to make sure that you check out the Yasuke book, published by Japan Society. Thank you to Peter Tatara. A really big shout out to Eric from Atlantic for making the magic happen with this book. This book was, Victor Newman, who's in the building. Victor, where's Victor at?
Yeah.
Give him a round of applause for designing this book. Make sure you go to Netflix, you check out Yasuke, and please engage in the creation of the impossible. It's very important. Anything that you want to do, you can do if you are willing to put in the work, execute, and really understand the process. Like you said, we have the idea. Now it's up to us to go do the work. Have a good night.
One last thing before y'all go, and this is something I wanted to say. We're still trying to figure ourselves out. This is my personal lens. You know, the black experience isn't a monolithic identity. It's a nuance. Every experience who's black here is a black experience. You're on your own journey. But I think it's really important. It's hard to do, but it's really important that we lift each other up. What I mean by that is that, you hear that response, a tie lifts, what's the famous expression?
I don't know.
The tie, what's the tie?
Rising tide
lifts all ways.
That's right, shout
exactly.
it out.
And so my point is that, and I wanted to say this to the young kids today, is just to be mindful of who inspires you. You know what I'm saying? Like, give shout outs to the people who motivate you, who give you the ideas. I know the industry is notorious, it's crazy, crazy competitive. It forces us to eat ourselves. But when you see someone putting you on, or you see someone motivating you and it's time for you to give love back, just show love. That's all you got to do, because you never really know how that person can help you down the line. So that's one of the things I wanted to add, is to make sure that we're uplifting each other in this medium, because the industry and the capitalism forces us to eat each other, you know what I'm saying, and compete against each other. And I don't create that way, and so I want to just make sure that's understood. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Keep it. We could get louder than this. We talked about this. Let's shout. Let's scream. Let's make some noise. LeSean Thomas. I am too happy for this, man. Peter Tatara. For those of you that are coming for Ninja Scroll, I'm gonna be here watching that shit for sure. Make sure you stick around. Check out the exhibit right outside. Make sure you get the book. And we look forward to seeing you throughout the weekend. Thank you, guys.